Hi guys, welcome. My name is Jack Fleet. I'm going to be leading the talk today about how to present to investors. Alongside my role in a PhD student at the University of Manchester researching biotechnology, I work as a student investment analyst for a student-led venture capital fund called Creator Fund. In today's talk, I'm going to be talking about and giving an insight into how to present to potential investors. Tips on how to kind of structure that presentation in sort of the most attractive way to investors, but also giving an introduction into who Creator Fund are, how we might be able to help you, and I guess what qualifies me to be in this position to talk to you guys today. So I guess for a little bit of context, what we see is that universities in the UK, we have some of the world's best universities here, and definitely some of Europe's best universities. And we have startup ideas being dreamed up in labs, in dorm rooms, in classrooms, in competitions like the Graphene Hackathon. We have students who have the potential to be exceptional founders with deep technical experience. We have the facilities, the labs and equipment necessary to build those minimum viable products. We have strong ties between universities and industry, which is fantastic for early customer acquisition. But I guess the problem is that students and academics just don't have very much investor experience, don't have very much experience talking to investors, how to pitch to investors, what investors are looking for. And that's kind of where Creator Fund steps in. So we're a student-led venture capital fund. We have investment partners and investment analysts, all of which who are students, master's students, PhD students like myself, or undergrads. We have broad kind of sector knowledge from fashion to fintech, biotech, medtech, data and AI, robotics. And we're based at 25 different UK universities, sort of strategically placed around the country. We invest in students and academics who've started businesses with technical innovation at the core. And what we see is each month, probably around 150, maybe more than that, companies pitching to us. And as a result, we get to see quite a wide array of good presentations, but also bad presentations. So today's sort of pitch, I'm going to be talking to you about how to structure that pitch. What makes an attractive presentation, what are investors looking for, and going on from there. So I think that you can do this in 10 slides. So there's sort of 10 slides to success, which is great for the Graphene Hackathon with the sort of 3-minute pitch element, but you can apply this to however long you need to pitch for in the future. The first slide should be commenting on the 3 whys. So we're looking at why me? What makes you the right founder for this startup? Why them? What makes the customers why should we care about the customers? Why should the investors start empathizing with the customers' problems? And then also tying into why now? What makes now the right time for a solution to a particular problem? With this sort of second slide, you need to be addressing the base knowledge. Now, it's safe to assume that investors probably won't have the same technical knowledge as you. So you need to break down that technical knowledge, break down that specific knowledge to the same level, and then move on from here so the investors and you are all on the same page. This is the kind of earliest point that you have to establish a market demand in your business. And overall with this presentation, but particularly with this slide, you should be aiming to kind of dig a hole, which is the problem, and kind of fill it with the solution. So for example, if you had an agri-tech company, and it would be a great opportunity to put up a slide that just has a statistic, a shocking statistic, that 80% of global agricultural land is dedicated for producing the feed for the food we eat. Putting that into context of global population rising to nearly 10 billion by 2050, we start to wonder, do we have enough food to feed that many people? And do we have enough land to produce food to feed that many people? So what we're doing here is we're breaking down that base knowledge. We're allowing the investors to start kind of empathizing with the customers and start to understand the market dynamic as a whole, and really highlighting the overall overarching problem. So you also kind of need to talk more specifically about the problem and articulate that unmet, meaningful problem that your business solely exists to fix. But you should also kind of comment on why it hasn't been fixed already. Is it because the costs are too high? Is it because the kind of industry is waiting for some kind of wonder tech innovation? Are there some strange market dynamics? Or is the industry kind of slow to innovate? When you're talking about the problem, you should give a kind of striking overview as you've kind of done in the previous slide, and then explain it briefly. You need to kind of elaborate on how this negatively impacts the customers, allowing the investors to start empathizing with those customers, but then also provide quantitative proof that this is not just a major problem, but a major problem that's monetizable if addressed. Ultimately, you are a business, so you're looking to monetize a solution to a particular problem. Investors are going to want to see a return on investment with it, so they're going to want to understand that what's monetizable about the business. So your solution can just be one slide articulated simply, visually, and memorably, something that will stick in the investor's mind. Taking the example of that agritech company as before, you could say you have an automated modular vertical insect farm located in shipping containers to repurpose urban brownfield land, recycling brewery or food waste, turning it into a high protein insect meal poultry feed, which is going to produce healthy, happy chickens. It's simple, it's visual, and it's memorable. It's going to stick in the investor's mind, and they're going to understand exactly what your business is from that point. You should kind of go into a little bit more detail when you're talking about the market. So you want to address things in terms of the total addressable market, or the TAM. And this is the total market demand, as well as the market growth potential. So actually 3.5 billion is probably at the lower end of what investors are looking for. They might be looking for 5 billion, 10 billion. This is this total market that you have the capability of kind of entering. But then you also need to break it down in terms of the serviceable, obtainable market, which is the proportion of the market that's within reach for you to capture. So whilst you're showing that there's this large market that you can kind of tap into and it's growing, so there's innovation in the field, you want to say, okay, we can realistically get this amount of money from it. And kind of breaking it down in terms of TAM and SOM is a good way of doing that. But ultimately, with this market slide, you need to be talking about and answering the question of, have you accurately identified an attractive market that you have a clear opportunity of capturing? This is kind of often overlooked when it comes to investor slides, but having something about important metrics. So if you're selling a physical product, having a slide about unit economics, or if you're selling digital services, user acquisition. So simply with unit economics, you can just say the revenue per unit minus the cost per unit. And this really breaks it down in sort of easy to understand way, and the investors can go on and kind of extrapolate what goes on with your business strategy and business plan from there. And the same with user acquisition. A really useful way of understanding it is with the lifetime value, which is just how much a customer is worth to you, over customer acquisition cost. So how expensive is it to get customers? And this slide is, as I say, often overlooked when it comes to investor pitch checks, but incredibly useful for investors to see. The competition. So it doesn't matter if you have a brand new company, brand new product in a brand new industry, you'll always have some sort of competition. So a pitch deck that doesn't include competition is a huge red flag. Also, an investor or a founder, who says that there isn't competition for their business is a bit of a red flag too. I think the best way of kind of doing this is with a differentiation matrix. So you put your company up visually versus other companies on kind of two metrics that are important to yours. And you can say that your company is better than company A, B, and C for these two reasons. And the investors can really visually see that. If you're going to do it in this way, try and avoid those broad, bland axes and be more specific to your business. But this allows you to kind of talk about the company's lasting sustainable defensibility. So talking about those unique selling points, what makes your business attractive, and that market differentiation with the competitive advantages. Well, when you're talking about your team, you really need to sort of show the investors the founding story, what brought you all together. Investors are looking to invest not just in a startup and an exciting product, but they're looking to invest in the people. Especially with Creator Fund, we're looking to invest in students. We're looking to invest in the people. So we want to see what the founding story is, why you are pursuing this, and also what makes you a good fit for the market. So what kind of relevant experience do you have that qualifies you to tackle this market with your particular solution to that particular problem? And also what makes the team skills complementary. It's also useful to kind of mention mentors or advisory teams or people that you can kind of draw from. And there's some leniency with hypothetical business plans to kind of draw from just a mentor and kind of pluck it out of the air. I'm sure we're allowed to do that in this in this situation. But if you were to go on and do this in reality, it's useful to kind of talk about who would be useful investor, who would be useful advisory team, who would be mentors, and what kind of skills they bring in here. So ultimately, at the end, the investors are going to want to know kind of a 1 to 5 year roadmap. What are the next steps and goals? What sort of support do you need, both sort of financial, i.e. what funds do you need and the kind of use of those funds, and more pastoral or advisory. What extra advice and help do you need from investors? Do you need them to bring in some people into your advisory team? Do you need them to bring in a COO, a CTO, a CFO, something along those lines? And where will that get you? So outlining a roadmap is really crucial for investors to see. And I think a great way of doing this is just to simply break it down into sort of 1, 2, 3, a few steps. What do you need to get a minimum viable product? What do you need to take that MVP to market? What do you need to acquire the first 1, 10, 100 customers? And then what do you need to make the business profitable? And this is just a simple way of sort of breaking it down in terms of a 5-year plan, I guess. And then ultimately at the end, we want to return to kind of the story that we've been building throughout this presentation. I mentioned this sort of earlier on about digging a hole and filling it. This presentation, this pitch should be sort of highlighting that there is a serious problem and you have a solution and you're the only people that can solve this. And that's why it's attractive to investors. So what do you want the investors to remember when they're eating their dinner at the end of the day? They want to be thinking back on your company and thinking, oh, that was a fantastic company. What do you want them to remember about your company? You really want to emphasize at this point why the world needs you, why the world needs your startup. Why should we be caring about this particular market? Why your solution is just so fascinating and interesting and worth investing in. And this is the sort of thing that you can do with that final 10th slide. So I think overall that's sort of 10 slides that you can break down. You can kind of expand upon a few of them if you need with intellectual property and that sort of thing, depending on who you're pitching to. But these are kind of the core 10 slides to success. So briefly before I end, I'll just talk again about Creator Fund. Creator Fund is a student-led venture capital fund. So all of our investment partners, all of our investment analysts like myself are students. We have broad sector knowledge, as I said before, from fashion to fintech, biotech, etc. But our kind of motive is we invest in students, we invest in academics, those kind of university-linked founders who don't have the experience and don't have the sort of knowledge of talking to investors, and often find that investors aren't relatable. They don't understand the kind of plights of being a student founder or an academic founder, and we can provide that kind of experience and help. So we have a total fund of about 1.5, 1.6 million, and we have the ability to invest up to £150,000 into these early stage startups. And the reason we have this is because we have a huge sort of limited partner network, our LP network of 40 odd high net worth individuals, funds, but also the fantastic Founders Factory, who's one of the sort of world's leading startup accelerators based down in London. And they can kind of help and provide some extra advisory support to our portfolio companies. So please get in touch. If you guys are willing to kind of take this business from the Graphene Hackathon on to make it into one of Europe's next greatest technology businesses, or if you just want to have a chat, or you have a business that you have in the workings, please definitely reach out. There's a sort of email there. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or just check out us on our website. I'm really excited to see the kind of companies that you guys come up with, and thank you very much. Cheers.